What's up guys, it's Johnny Candido of Candido Training HQ, and today is going to be the first Q&A video. So let's get started with the first question. Thoughts on running your bench program and squat program at the same time? And I will also connect this with another question that alluded to what to do in the off season on either of those programs. So first of all, as far as doing those programs at the same time, that is fine. Now I've answered in the comments before not to do so, but I was thinking more so about doing those programs back to back, because that's something I specifically do not recommend if you're looking at each lift individually. Because the reasoning behind that is you need a break to prevent injury from overdoing it essentially. Now as far as the off season of those programs, what I recommend is that you focus on a primary accessory and then you do the competition lift for some singles to preserve that skill base that you need to go into the next training cycle, to when you do train that lift more intensely. So basically, to not necessarily just do the bare minimum completely, just like one time a week, which is what I initially recommended, more to do a little bit more of work, but to still not focus on trying to increase strength, just still to maintain strength, but to maintain strength at your work capacity. I've changed my view, and I'm not a proponent of trying to resensitize yourself to a training stimulus as much as working up to your work capacity without going beyond that. So more so just about trying to prevent cumulative fatigue to prevent injury in the long run. That's now my view. So I recommend around 2 times a week. For the bench example, on the bench, what I'm doing is 4 sets of 8 on close grip bench, then 3 sets of 6, and then I'm doing 3 singles back off sets, doing the competition style bench press. And then on other days when I'm doing the dumbbell bench, which is a chest dominant lift of course, then I'm doing of course still the 3x1 back off sets of the competition bench. However, for the dumbbell bench, I'm just increasing the rep range a little bit by 4 reps on each day. So 3x10 and then 4x12. And the similar idea for the squat. I recommend like a high bar squat and do 3x6, 4x8. Something very basic like that. Very similar to my linear program. Okay, so the second question is, why did you decide not to compete at Raw Nationals? I understand you were going through injury, but why wouldn't you take it easy and just try to put up a total? Well, it's easy. It's because I care more about my spinal health than I care about the USAPL. Alright, next question. Why are you leaving the IPF? Well, this extends off of that question. The fact is I did not compete at Raw Nationals. So since I didn't compete at Raw Nationals, I can't be an IPF lifter. It's not my choice. And if you just compete in an IPF affiliate like the USAPL, you are not an IPF lifter automatically. You need to compete internationally. So I did not qualify by hitting a required Wilks score at Nationals, of course, to make the Arnold. And of course, you have to win your weight class to go to Worlds. Now, as far as why I'm competing in the USPA, that's just to try out the deadlift bar and to see how I can do in those looser conditions, essentially by having a longer weigh-in period as well, just to see what type of total I can put up. Alright, next question. What do you think about American training, for example the Texas method, and do you think it needs to catch up to some various European methods, for example Shieko, outside of novice progression? Okay, first of all, I think that's a very, very inaccurate representation to use the Texas method to compare it to Shieko. You're essentially comparing one of the best, if not the best powerlifting coach of all time to Ripito, who I think he would admit himself uses powerlifting more as a tool for general strength training. He's more of a mainstream guy. So that's not an accurate comparison. And as far as if America needs catching up to do, if you look at our outcome, we won Raw National, or not Raw Nationals, we won Raw Worlds in 2015, both in the open and in junior class. And for example, for myself, I had a higher Wilks as a junior than any junior lifter who was a Russian at Worlds. And that's not to brag, but it's to say at Raw Nationals, I don't think I even would have gotten top 3. So that gives you an idea of how amazingly competitive America is, and how these stereotypes of various nations just being super strong in our eyes sometimes is more of just an idea of imagining what the outsiders are rather than actually looking at the results. Now I will add, especially with nations like Russia, they are amazing at single ply lifting, and of course they do have amazing lifters. There's no denying that. However, America is tremendous at powerlifting, and specifically at raw powerlifting. You look at the untested side of the sport, we have almost all of the world records in raw without knee wraps. And if you look at 165, 181, 198, those three classes are most relatable to me. You look at that, you have Mika Marino, highest total of all time. Deadlifts well over 700 at 165. Then you look at 181, you have Malik Durstein, I believe that's how you say his name. He squats 715 at 181. And then you have Jesse Norris, deadlifts over 800 pounds, drug tested. And those are the best lifters of all time, and they use American methods. So it's just not really a genuine comparison, I would say. You look at guys like that, and then you look at guys like Blaine Sumner, Lane Norton, Greg Knuckles, Mike Teixeira, Bryce Lewis, what Matt Gary recommends, and you're looking at guys who all recommend higher volume, all recommend higher specificity, which is very similar to those European and to the Russian methods. So I just don't buy it to compare the Texas method to Shieko. Anyways, in-depth thoughts and opinions on the conjugate method. Now this is a good segue here. Overall, the way I look at the conjugate method is if you are going to use it as a raw lifter, you do have to recognize the hurdles that come with that. So we could talk about this forever, but overall the way I see it is, as far as if you're going to use bands and chains, you definitely need to not get carried away with that. The more you can rely on straight weight, likely the better, because of course specificity will apply. And also when it comes to the squat, you need to view that differently versus the deadlift. And even the bench itself is a little bit in between those two. What I mean by this is the eccentric of the squat is possibly the most skilled aspect of all the lifts, because you need to time it well enough to where then you get the stretch reflex at exactly the right moment, and to where you're just strong with that tempo. It's very specific. However, with the bench press, while you do need to lower it at the same tempo, and you do need to practice that, there is a break between the eccentric and concentric. So that allows it to not be quite as skill-based as the squat. And then for the deadlift, it's the least skill-based, because you can just get in the right position to pull, and then you can pull with maximum effort, maximum speed. So that's why, in my opinion, you see that speed work tend to carry over a little bit better in that variation, tend to carry over a little bit better on the deadlift. And that's why I think a lot of huge deadlifters do use the West Side method very successfully. However, overall, when we're looking at raw lifters, it is important to understand that most of the best raw lifters in the entire world do not use conjugate. And those who do tend to be exceptions. So they stand out in our minds because they are just that, exceptions. However, I will never say to not use a method that is building you strength. So if it's building you strength, by all means do it. But will I do it? No. And do I recommend it? No. If you want to do it, by all means, also go to someone who does use it successfully and ask them questions. Don't ask people who don't have a personal experience with it, because I will not have enough knowledge to go more in depth on it than someone who actually is getting stronger on that method, who will for sure know more than me on it. Alright, now next question. How do you combine your deadlift world record aspirations and that you're on your squat program when you're barely deadlifting during those 9 weeks? Alright, this is very simple. It's the fact that I'm going to increase my isometric lower back strength, and I'm going to increase my glute and hamstring strength, mostly glute, and from hip extension of course in the squat, and then also increase my quad strength. All I need to do from there is to just make sure I fill in with adductor strength and abductor strength, and increase my hip mobility gradually over time. So that's why I'll start with a little bit of a narrower sumo deadlift, and that's why you've been seeing me do that. And then I'll just gradually work my way out, or I may stick with a little bit narrower. I'll just feel that part out. So that's really all it is. There's really no reason for the squat not to carry over. And once again, we're looking at this in a long-term outlook. You're not trying to just force it short-term progress on all three lifts as an advanced level lifter. That's simply not how it works. Alright, so let's look at this. It seems like weightlifting and strongman are more trendy than powerlifting now, or trendier than powerlifting now, any chance you'll try either of those? No. First of all, I've already tried weightlifting, and I went to NMU, which is one of the 4 Olympic weightlifting training centers in the United States, and it's the only one that's connected to university, and I just didn't like it. It was a great experience overall, and I have nothing bad to say about it. However, comparing the sports of weightlifting and strongman to powerlifting, to me, just doesn't make sense, because both of those sports are professional sports at the top level. You're making money in strongman. I believe Eddie Hall is making a full-time living. I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But I believe he's making a full-time living. It's on TV. And you're comparing that to also to weightlifting, which of course is financed through governments. It has Olympic backing. So you're winning Olympic gold medals at the top level. So of course you are going to have way more talent in that than in powerlifting. Now as far as trendiness though, if we're comparing trendiness, then I don't think it's there. I think powerlifting is actually trendier in terms of exponential growth in relation to where it was before. Because if you look at powerlifting, it was at a point where at Worlds there were 800 competitors in 2015, which was already the best, I believe the best participant rate of all time for powerlifting. If not, it was one of the best for world meet. Then you look at Raw Nationals, that was the biggest, I believe, the biggest national meet ever in powerlifting history. And it was 300 plus more than Worlds, I believe. More than Worlds, it was 1,100 plus. So you're looking at huge growth. That's within the same year. And you're looking at performances that are even better at Raw Nationals than they were at Worlds. As an 83 kilogram lifter, I know, there were 2 lifters deadlifting over 700 pounds, which was over the IPF world record just at Raw Nationals alone. So I think powerlifting is growing massively, and I also think the idea that you should just follow the sport that's the most trendy at the moment is incredibly silly, and I don't think you'll get any payoff from doing that. People will see how fake that is, and people see passion and they recognize it. You know, guys like Mark Bell have been putting out content for years. He's been having content with his potato cam, I remember, before his channel got big, and he just kept at it and kept actually caring about people, caring about the sport. Same with guys like Ed Cohn. People see through the fake stuff and they see the people who actually give a damn about this sport. Alright. Sorry, this is getting a little intense. Alright, please summarize why or why not and when you will consider collaborating with Jason Blaha of Juggernaut Fitness TV, caller outer of fake natties and BS spewers alike. Okay, I would love to collaborate with Jason Blaha if we have time. Now I believe he is within 40 minutes of myself, so that decision is also of course partially on him. If he's down for that, then I am too. Now I will ask him about a clip. I'll insert this clip in this video. I believe he said that every elite level drug tested powerlifter is on drugs.
Now to all the other guys who are out there competing against him, who are now ragging on Jesse and saying, oh, he's a cheater, so are all you guys. No one in the top ranks of a sport, I don't care how drug tested it is, I don't care how drug tested it is, everybody in the top ranks of any sport that involves strength or power is absolutely using performance enhancing drugs, no exception ever.
So given that, I would like to know what numbers do I need to hit to where I am in that group, to where it is for sure that I am a fake natty. I want to know what requirement I need to hit. Alright. Why don't you do more collabs with YouTubers, YouTube powerlifters, like Mark Smelly Bell, Silent Mike, and Omar Isuf? Alright. First of all, Omar and I have collaborated in the past, and we did that on his channel. Now, I think we should do some in person, I would hope to do some in person, but the problem is a lot of this depends on logistics. And personally with myself, I have a really significant phobia when it comes to flying, to the point where I never want to fly again in my entire life. It actually might be a big deterrent to me ever doing Worlds again, which I hate to say. I'm not 100% decided on this, but if I have to fly, I don't know if I will. Unless if I get some type of prescribed drug, I don't want to fly ever again. It's just a disaster every time. I literally cried on my last flight. I'm not kidding. Tears were coming out. It was that serious. So a lot of things like that just end up happening as far as logistics, and then as far as where you are in your training program, as far as if I'm close to a meet, because everything for a collaboration to be how I want it, it needs to be right. You need to be lifting heavy. You don't want to see a collaboration with super training and then I come and I just squat 405 for volume. That just wouldn't be right. So we'll see. It just all depends. Okay, is it bad to be on programs that have a peak year-round? Would it be better to be on a program that doesn't have a peak if you're just trying to build strength and if you're not competing for a long time? If so, what program would that be? Basically, he says, is it necessary to peak for strength gains? Alright, to me, I think yes, it absolutely is necessary to peak often for strength gains. However, understanding what peaking means is really important. Because when we're looking at peaking in a traditional sense, I think it only applies to advanced level lifters. Now what I mean by, I don't mean in a traditional sense, I mean in the outsider perspective. When you're talking about peaking, as in this is something you rarely do, this is something you're putting aside getting stronger for to peak. That is only what's going to happen if you're going for huge lifts and it takes a very long time to get any type of progress. However, if you're talking about an immediate level or intermediate level lifter, you should be able to be peaking pretty often because you should have cycles or points in your cycle where you are doing low reps and you are fully recovered and where you are reducing volume. That is not just to show your strength, that is necessary to develop strength and to develop the skill of handling heavy weights. Otherwise, if you're always in a higher volume phase, well then you are also going to adapt to that stimulus. You're going to get better and better at doing volume, at doing higher reps, and you may develop a weakness when it comes to lower rep ranges. Now, I'm not saying that will always happen, but I'm saying that it is definitely a possibility, and as an intermediate level lifter, there really is no reason to entirely ignore the lower rep range and to ignore actually hitting PRs. And another huge benefit to hitting PRs and to handling those heavy weights is you see where your technique is at, and you also see how effective your programming is. So if you find that you're throwing in a lot of hamstring curls, you're throwing in a lot of different things that you haven't been doing in the past, maybe increasing the rep range on your accessories, and it's feeling great, well, why not put that to the test? Why not actually see what results come of that? Because if you can hit a 5x5 PR, but then when it comes down to 1 rep max, you're nowhere near it, well, you need to find out how to actually make sure that translates. It's not just a matter of decreasing volume and then voila, you hit a PR right away, right once that fatigue goes away. You also need to actually develop the ability to hit those low reps before you do hit that 1 rep max. So it all just comes down to that, little details like that. And at the end of the day, intermediate programming is significantly different than advanced programming. You need to not look at those two as the same. You should not be overly burnt out from peaking too often if you are progressing each month. And by the way, that is how I define an intermediate, as someone who can progress each month. Alright, let me see here. I believe that's nearly all of it. I have around 10 to 12 written down here. Okay, this is a good one. Why do I have issues with rounding when the weight is in front of me, like the deadlift and front squat, but never when it is on my back, like the squat or good morning? Alright, so let's compare the right exercises here. Let's compare the front squat to the back squat first. Well, with the front squat, the reason why you have rounding issues and why that's such a common issue is because when you round your upper back, it allows you to shift your knees back essentially. So your knees don't have to go as far forward. And this could either be a mobility issue in terms of dorsiflexion at your ankle, or it could be in terms of your quad strength, your just quads are too weak. So if it's either of those, by your upper back rounding, it allows you to take some of that range of motion and place it on your upper back to where you're moving, of course, your thoracic erectors, And the reason why you can't just let your hips shoot back to take over that range of motion with a completely neutral spine is because then the bar would just fall forward. So in the back squat, it's different. In the back squat, your hips can shoot back, and typically if you have a real severe issue with rounding in the front squat, odds are you're also the type of lifter who does have his butt shoot up in the back squat. However, now when we're looking at the good morning versus a deadlift, the reason why you don't round in the good morning is because rarely do people perform the good morning off of pins and with the same loading that you'd use for a deadlift max. Imagine Pete Rubish doing 880 pounds on a good morning off pins. Usually you're handling 100, 200 to 300 pounds less on the good morning than you'll ever handle on a deadlift. That's just that simple. Alright, I believe we are hitting the end here. Yeah, we only have one more, and that is, how did you meet your girlfriend? Well, I met my girlfriend off Twitter, and I saw that she was Asian, so I figured she probably had some pretty good squat genetics, and we decided, I went into her DMs and decided to try some legal edibles in Colorado, emphasizing legal, and so there was no issues there. And it was a really horrible experience. I'm gonna be honest. It was possibly one of the worst experiences of my life. I distinctly remember thinking that hell is real based on that experience, because basically what happened is I tried it and nothing really happened with, I think it was a cookie, just a little bite, and then I had like the whole cookie afterwards just to get something out of it. I didn't think anything was happening. So I didn't find out that the stimulus would take some hours before it kicks in, and yeah, it was just an awful experience. But moving on, now we live together in Houston, Texas, and she actually lived with me in Ohio. So she lived with me first for 3 months or so in Ohio. Then now I moved here, and that is why I'm here in Texas. A lot of people still ask me that. I'm here because that is where my girlfriend lives. And we are planning to have a long-term relationship, and I would never be in a relationship personally if I wasn't planning on marriage, on having kids, on all of that later down the road. And I was just fortunate that the best looking person I've ever seen also is into powerlifting, also is into a lot of other things, and has similar worldviews to myself, which for myself, that is incredibly important. So I guess that's one of the benefits of being on the internet and being on YouTube, is just being able to interact with a lot of different types of people. So that's it, guys. That's all questions for you guys, I believe, for this. Now let me know in the description, or in the comments, sorry, if you would like for me to answer more questions of one Q&A post, or if you would like once a week and then new questions refreshed, because there were literally over 500 questions, so I could go through many of them still, and there are many great ones left. But also I'll mention that the link in the description to the Instagram account, to my Instagram account, where all these Q&As are posted, is there, and also to follow my Instagram account, because I've never shouted that out once on YouTube until now. So that's it, guys. Hopefully this was enjoyable. Make sure to like this video if you'd like to see more of it. If not, comment and let me know, that's fine. And subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace.
Man, fuck a shooting star. Biggie died, they shot a star. Who you know in West LA? Bring that ruckus to MA. Jeez.